When we talk about American history, we're often given a polished version. A version with familiar names, familiar faces, and familiar narratives. But beneath that surface lies another story. A story of women whose labor, intellect, courage, and leadership helped build this nation, yet whose names were deliberately left out of textbooks. From the very beginning of America, Black women were present, not just as victims of oppression, but as thinkers, builders, strategists, and survivors. Take Phyllis Wheatley, for example. Enslaved as a child, she became one of the first published poets in America. Her words challenged the idea that Black people, especially Black women, lacked intellect. Yet for centuries, her contributions were treated as a footnote rather than a foundation. Or Lucy Terry Prince, who composed one of the earliest known poems in American history. Decades before the country even declared independence, her work survived only because it was passed down orally, not because institutions cared to preserve it. Black women worked the fields, raised children that weren't their own, served as midwives, healers, cooks, and caretakers, often without pay, protection, or recognition. Their knowledge of medicine saved lives. Their endurance sustained families. Their resistance took many forms, from quiet defiance to open rebellion, but history rarely called them leaders. Even during slavery, Black women were organizers. They planned escapes, protected children, preserved African traditions, and resisted dehumanization in ways both visible and unseen. Their resistance wasn't always loud, but it was constant. When emancipation finally came, freedom did not mean equality. Black women stepped into a new battlefield. Survival in a society determined to exclude them. They built schools, churches, and mutual aid societies. They became teachers when no one else would teach their children. They fed communities when the government wouldn't. Yet their stories remained buried. History told us about founding fathers, but never the founding mothers who labored without credit, and this erasure was not accidental. As America entered the modern age, Black women continued to push boundaries, often becoming the first in spaces never designed for them. Mary McLeod Bethune, born to parents who were formerly enslaved, founded schools, advised presidents, and became one of the most powerful Black women of the 20th century. Yet she's rarely mentioned alongside the political giants she influenced. Rebecca Lee Crumpler became the first Black woman physician in the United States. She treated formerly enslaved people who had nowhere else to turn, despite facing racism and sexism from the medical community. She documented her work so future generations could learn, even if she knew she might never be celebrated. In science and mathematics, Black women worked behind the scenes, their brilliance hidden behind the success of others. They calculated trajectories, solved equations, and advanced technology, yet were denied promotions, credit, and visibility. In politics, Black women organized voter registration drives, led grassroots movements, and mobilized communities. While men often received the recognition, even when Black women broke barriers, the headlines often ignored them. They were the first, but rarely the celebrated. They were pioneers, but often forgotten. And yet, they persisted. Because for Black women, progress was never just personal. It was communal. Every door opened was meant to stay open for the next generation. When people think of the civil rights movement, a few names dominate the narrative, but behind every famous speech, every march, every turning point, Black women were organizing, strategizing, and sustaining the movement. Ella Baker believed in collective leadership, not charismatic figureheads. She mentored young activists, helped form grassroots organizations, and empowered everyday people to lead. Without her, much of the movement's infrastructure wouldn't exist. Septima Clark used education as a weapon against oppression. Her citizenship schools taught Black Americans how to read, write, and vote, quietly dismantling voter suppression from the inside out. Fannie Lou Amer, born into sharecropping, became one of the most powerful voices for voting rights. Her testimony exposed the brutal reality of racism to the nation, yet she paid a heavy personal price for speaking truth. These women weren't just participants. They were architects, but history often framed them as helpers rather than leaders. Even Rosa Parks, often reduced to a single moment, was a trained activist with years of experience resisting injustice. Her action wasn't accidental. It was strategic. Black women faced violence, imprisonment, and economic retaliation. Money lost Job's homes, and safety, yet remained committed to justice. Their courage wasn't just about changing laws, it was about reclaiming dignity. And still, their full stories remain largely untold. Today, Black women continue to shape culture, politics, business, and activism, often while still fighting to be seen and heard. The erasure hasn't ended, it's evolved. Black women's ideas are still copied, their labor still undervalued, their leadership still questioned. That's why telling these stories matters. Because when history excludes Black women, it distorts truth. It teaches future generations that leadership has one face, one voice, one identity. But the truth is far richer. Black women have always been leaders, even when the world refused to call them that. Their stories are not just about struggle. They are about brilliance, strategy, compassion, and resilience. They remind us that progress is often built quietly, by women who refuse to disappear. By telling these stories, we honor the past, empower the present, and protect the future. Because history is not complete until all voices are heard. And the voices of Black women deserve more than footnotes. They deserve the spotlight.